from a defabricated solar-powered garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA. This is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, hot new carpentry tips on putting the finishing touches on Grandpa's wheelchair ramp. And now, the podcast host who probably doesn't need carpentry tips because he is basically St. Joseph, Pete Dominic.
Wow, I am so flattered, Pico, to be compared to Jesus' stepdad. Isn't that who we're talking to? Thank you very much, my friend. And thank you for joining me today. I've got two excellent guests. First-timer on the show, veteran political reporter and co-creator, co-writer of my favorite daily newsletter filled with cursing and jokes. It's Sam Youngman on the show for the first time. Our conversation starts at about 15 minutes after I do a little news update. And then I've got Ophira Eisenberg, one of our favorite comedians and one of the most thoughtful people I know. Ophira joining me for the first time in a few weeks, and that begins at 41 minutes into today's episode. Shout out to my boy Joby out there in Northern California who broke his tibia mountain biking over the weekend. Joby, thinking of you, buddy. I hope we're here to keep your spirits up, my brother. And also, just wanted to say I'm still high from Thursday night because I never stopped doing drugs. No, I mean naturally high because I had such a great time with almost 73 of you on Thursday night. We were kind of celebrating, although I guess we're not supposed to celebrate Donald Trump's indictment. He's going to be in New York tomorrow, Tuesday, and we'll talk about it. But it was just so much fun Thursday night and sent me in happy to the weekend. It was a hell of a week last week. I hope you had a great weekend. Welcome to April. We made it. We did it. It's here. April, of course, celebrating Arab American heritage and child abuse prevention and autism awareness. It's also apparently Keep America Beautiful Month, Jazz Appreciation Month, and Poetry Writing Month. And if I read on what's significant about April, you've got National Pillow Fight Day, which is on the 6th. I hope that we'll sponsor a pillow fight, a national pillow fight, National Library Worker Day. Okay. Thank you, librarians. National Siblings Day, all right? And World Penguin Day, all in April. Oh, and this fun fact, apparently in the Northern Hemisphere, now April is when the smaller animals that hibernate in the winter usually start coming out of their burrows. And I don't know what those animals would be, but you can tell me if you do. Also, it's the time when birds migrate north and settle down for the summer to mate. So very exciting. April showers, of course, bring May flowers, but hopefully the rain doesn't get you down, and if it does, never forget that silver lining. How about it? Well, lots to talk about besides just the fact that it's April. Terrible tragedy coming out of these tornadoes in the Midwest. The death toll rose to 32 Sunday after a batch of ferocious storms and tornadoes devastated communities across the American South and Midwest, while parts of the southern plains braced for their own round of severe weather. The storm outbreak Friday walloped the country, spawned more than 50 tornado reports in at least 7 states where tornadoes crushed homes and businesses, ripped roofs off buildings, splintered trees, and sent vehicles flying. Scary stuff. And to those of you that are in any way were subject to those, let us know. And it was really nice to hear from Kim in Iowa, who emailed me and said, I just love this community you've created, Pete. Allowed me to be a part of it. I've had so many people reach out to me after the storms in Iowa last night to check in. I'm so grateful for you and that you've brought these awesome people into my life. That's all. Hope all's well. Great shows this week. Eric Siegel was on fire. Oh, Kim, that's a nice note. Thank you very much. Email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com, folks. In other news, of course, Donald Trump is set to be arraigned in New York City on Tuesday. And then he put out a press release that he's gonna have a press conference at Mar-a-Lago. So he's gonna fly back down to Florida, I guess, and give a speech in hopes that everybody will watch it and cover it. And I hope that they don't. Apparently, he's also raked in more than like $5 million in donations in the 48 hours after he was indicted on Thursday. So his supporters feel really bad, and those emails and pleas for help are apparently working, which is, I guess, really unsurprising. Other things are happening in the world as well. The Twitter verification process was set to begin. The great blue check purge that was set to begin and confused. I still have a blue check. I don't even know what it means. I'm not paying for a blue check, but apparently there was some controversy yesterday because Elon Musk, of course, who owns Twitter, he removed the New York Times blue check and tweeted, "The real tragedy of the New York Times is that their propaganda isn't even interesting." And here I am spreading Elon Musk's propaganda, but the New York Times announced earlier this week it was not going to pay the fee to retain its badge, its verification badge, nor would it reimburse any of its staffers to do so. And apparently nearly all the major U.S. journalistic outfits have made the same decision to not give Twitter money to retain the blue badge. And now anyone can have one, so it doesn't mean a lot. I did think that was worth mentioning. And I'm just so sad to see Twitter become what it's become. It's been a great thing for so many of us to meet, to connect, and so that it just kind of sucks. We'll see where it goes from here. I'm still using it every day and looking up people's tweets. And yesterday I saw a lot of people tweeting about 60 Minutes. I'll read you some of those. Really super disappointing to see what 60 Minutes did because Leslie Stahl sat down with Georgia Republican and completely crazy racist anti-Semitic person, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, and they made her look amazing. I watched it, so you don't have to. They had her just walking across the Capitol and through the Capitol, and they sat down. They gave her a sit down, and they asked her questions, and they even went to her house and filmed her doing squats and pull-ups and training, even used B-roll of her competing in fitness events. It was just really a very glowing profile, and I don't know why they did it. Leslie Stahl sat down with her and tried to appear to challenge her, but I don't think came anywhere close, and they went crazy on Twitter. And I'll read you some of those tweets. The one thing I did learn that I thought was interesting, and the only thing I'll share about Marjorie Taylor Greene that explains a lot, seriously, is this tidbit.
She told us that her dad, an arch conservative, listened to right-wing talk radio all day long.
And naturally, me being with my parents a lot, I listened as well.
Well, that explains it. I mean, seriously, if you grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh and the rest of them and still do, that's how she behaves. She doesn't understand policy. She doesn't understand law. She doesn't understand science or history or anything. She has a mediocre understanding of how the world works and how the American government works that was spoon-fed to her by her dad and Rush Limbaugh and whoever else is making millions of dollars selling advertising by outraging people with their simple-minded binary bullshit that they fed an entire generation of Americans. And now we have their kids in Congress. Thank you very much for that. But more importantly, why did 60 Minutes do this, disgrace themselves? I mean, we can guess why. They wanted to get good ratings, that's for sure. I think Bradley Whitford, I'll just read some of the reactions. Bradley Whitford, the actor of The West Wing, great guy, love him. He wrote about this. This reminds me of a guy we defeated in the 1940s who wasn't afraid to share his opinion. I should say the 60 Minutes tweet says, Marjorie Taylor Greene, nicknamed MTG, isn't afraid to share her opinions, no matter how intense or in your face they are. She sits down with Leslie Stahl this Sunday on 60 Minutes. And Bradley Whitford writes, reminds me of a guy we defeated in the 1940s who wasn't afraid to share his opinions, no matter how intense and in your face they were. Too bad you couldn't interview him, Leslie Stahl. You could have asked him about his vegetarianism and his love of dogs. Yeah, that's Bradley Whitford. Ben Collins, NBC News senior reporter, wrote, opinions such as calling a Parkland shooting survivor, quote, little Hitler? What are we doing here, guys? Our friend Ellie Mistal writes, legacy media really looks at these white supremacists and fascists and thinks, how can we help them? The way you guys say her nickname is MTG, as if it's a cute moniker bestowed by her besties when her initials are just MTG, and her nicknames are Marjorie Three Names and Unfrozen Caveman Congressman, just shows that you're here to launder her reputation and be complicit. Adam Kinzinger tweeted, wow, insane that 60 Minutes would do this. And it went on and on. One more, Anthony Davis. This was an irresponsible, misjudged decision by 60 Minutes to legitimize an insurrectionist. Both sides' coverage is not journalism. So that is the reaction. I agree with all of it. So disappointed to see it. But we carry on to yet another news story, which is this Russian pro-war blogger killed in St. Petersburg restaurant blast. You just read about that. one of Russia's most influential pro-Kremlin war bloggers, a guy named Vladimir Tatarsky, was killed in a blast at a restaurant in St. Petersburg. The incident took place around 6 p.m., and I'm just learning about this now, but thought it was worth mentioning, looking into and looking up. I'll probably get Bill Boyle on this week to talk about that more. In Russia, let me know who else you want me to get on this week. I'm not done booking it yet. Although I didn't even mention, I think earlier, that it's Passover week. Oh, how dare me. It's happy Passover, everybody. On Wednesday night it all begins, sundown for a week, and then you've got Easter this weekend, and we're headed up to Syracuse to see Mom and Dad. Val and I and the girls really looking forward to that. That'll be a great long weekend. Hopefully you'll have one as well. And let me just wrap the news up here with two fun stories. First of all, I just thought this is hilarious, and this is not the first time it's happened, but King Charles, the new king, he was offered a Burger King crown during his visit to Berlin, Germany last week. And I just absolutely love it. The playful crown, which featured a purple top and fake jewels illustrated around it, a signature for the fast food giant. Strangely enough, though, this is not the first time King Charles has been offered the Burger King crown. Apparently, he was offered that back in England as well. And then he accepted the gift and said, oh, lovely. That's very kind of you, Burger King. That was a fun story. And here's another story from Europe that I thought was interesting. The people of Paris aren't just protesting and pissed about raising the retirement age. No, they just voted to ban these e-scooters that you're seeing popping up in cities across the country over the past few years. Parisians vote to ban rental e-scooters from French capital by a huge margin. Results showed 90% support for ridding Paris of self-service scooters whose riders are accused of flouting rules of the road. And what do you think about that? Do they have them where you live? If you live in a city or a town, do you like them? 90% people got rid of them. They were the pioneer when they introduced them in 2018, and they were looking to, support non-polluting forms of urban transport, but apparently the vehicles grew in popularity among young people. So did the number of accidents. 3 people died and 459 were injured in e-scooter accidents in Paris. And so people were asked if they were for or against them, and their socialist mayor, Anne Hidalgo, has decided to promote cycling and bike sharing, but supported the ban on e-scooters. So there you go. No more e-scooters in Paris. And now it's time to get to my first guest. Just a reminder, I cannot do the show without your support. Please subscribe. Thank you to new subscribers. Thank you to Shannon White, who resubscribed. Sometimes people end their subscription for any number of reasons, and then they continue to listen or come back. You can always come back, and that's exactly what Shannon did. Welcome back, Shannon, and thank you very much for signing up. Valerie Knudsen. I'm saying the K silently. Hey, Valerie, thank you very much for signing up over the weekend as well. Great to see those subscriptions coming in. Can't do it without you guys. You can always pay more if you want, and that's how we keep the shed lights on. All right, well, very excited to get to my first guest. This is the first time he's ever been on the show, and I subscribe to the newsletter that he co-writes with Adam Parkomenko. It's called Today's Big Stuff, and I get it in my inbox almost every day around noon, and this is the introduction to their newsletter, or a description. They say, Today's Big Stuff is a Monday through Friday newsletter for progressive Americans who want to save their democracy while making fun of people like Donald Trump Jr. and Lauren Boebert, who might actually be the same really dumb person. Today's Big Stuff was founded early in 2019 by Ready for Hillary creator and Democratic strategist Adam Parkomenko, who's also been on the show in the early days, and former White House correspondent and veteran campaign reporter Sam Youngman, who joins me today. Very excited to have Sam on for the first time. He's a veteran political campaign reporter, a former White House correspondent, and he wrote this amazing piece in Politico in, I think, 2013 when he's like, I'm out of D.C., and just tore up the place and the media covering join it and all the traps that you fall in. And he went back to Kentucky, his home state, where he worked as a journalist there. And now he's out in California. He's working at a university out there. Needless to say, he's a real smart guy, a nice guy, passionate guy. And I was psyched to have him on for the first time. I hope you'll subscribe to that newsletter. And I hope you will go tell Sam that you appreciated him joining me. He's on Twitter at Sam Youngman. Today'sBigStuff.com, co-creator, co-writer. Let's do it for the first time ever, talking with Sam Youngman. All right, there he is, Uncle Sam Youngman, making his debut on Stand Up. This has got to be a really big deal for you. Congratulations. I know you've flown in Air Force One and you've done a lot in your career, but this is something to journal about, I would imagine.
Man, I am so excited to be here. That is a hell of an introduction. I'm not sure me or my cussing newsletter deserve all that love, but we'll sure take it.
Yes, I know you're nervous. Calm down. Today's big stuff is so good. As listeners know, I'm a huge fan. I read it pretty much every day. I love the style. I love what you do. So I'm really psyched to get to have you on here to have a conversation with you. How did this, before we get into you and who you are, how did this newsletter start? How are you getting away with it? And why do we love it so much?
Well, let me say, first of all, Pete, thank you so much for being so supportive of it. We don't have the big bucks behind it. It's basically just two guys and a laptop. Now Adam Parkamenko, who you might know from,
I know him. He was on in the early days, and I follow him on Twitter, and I think he's great. Yeah, but I don't know him that well.
He was the guy behind the Ready for Hillary movement. He was the guy behind the Kremlin annex after Trump's Helsinki, little kiss-ass marathon. And he and I ended up working together on a Democratic super PAC in 2019 that was just a complete shit show. And the only thing that came out of it was Adam and I decided to work together. And we took this little thing we'd been doing for about 6 people, mostly to make ourselves laugh and to, sort of cope with the nightmares of Trump land. And, we just decided, hey, let's put this out as a newsletter. Maybe we get a few hundred people, laughing along with us. And that's all it was at the beginning, just something to help ourselves cope. Some reason to get out of bed in the morning when Trump was tweeting at us and calling us assholes. And, it was just a way for us to deal. And about halfway through 2019, we got an email from a woman named Geraldine. And Geraldine said, thank you. This newsletter is keeping me going. And oh, shit. All of a sudden, our newsletter has some purpose. We've got a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And so we just kept doing it, and it just kept growing. We're now at about, I want to say 105,000 subscribers, and going strong, just cussing out politicians and making very immature poop jokes every day.
Yeah, I love the shit humor. I love all the scatological stuff. I am so here for it. Please think of me at least one time when you're working on a bit that has anything to do with poop. I wonder, I guess if I were to ask like one critical question, I'm a little more careful with my language and social media because I used to think I might want to run for like town office. So that was one reason. And the other reason is like I don't want to be divisive. I think you could, you guys call people every name you could possibly call anyone. Do you worry about that? I mean, like I said, I'm here for it. I love it. But do you think that it's like, do you worry about it being divisive or that people that you're calling names get upset or hurt or their followers or supporters?
No, not even a little bit. Once they decided to kidnap kids to make a point about immigration, once they decided to attack our Capitol and smear their crap on the walls, once they decided to tear gas a bunch of Americans so Trump could do a photo op in front of a church, no, I don't feel too bad about cussing those folks out, and I don't plan to stop. The civility police, they tend to profile. They only go after certain folks, and I am I'm not having that anymore. I did the DC thing for a very long time. I did the let's all be polite thing for a very long time, and I just saw the same people getting hurt over and over again, and the same people getting away with shit over and over again. So, yeah, man, I hear what you're saying. And for a long time, I would have agreed with you, but I didn't change the rules. They did.
I'm not saying that that's my opinion. So I don't know that we disagree, just to be clear. I worry about dehumanizing people and the hate that builds. I don't want to become these people. And this is how I say it. I'm not afraid to say I hate people. I think I even tell my teenage daughters like this. I do hate some people, but I don't wish harm upon them or their families. But it's hard not to sometimes because they are wishing that upon mine, or not mine per se, but certainly more marginalized families. Or I've got daughters, I mean, like, that's the only thing I worry about. Like in my own mindset, that I don't want to kind of dehumanize people because I don't know. Is there any merit to that, or am I just?
No, I absolutely hear what you're saying. I guess I would say, Rudy Giuliani dehumanized himself. We didn't turn him into that puddle of disaster that he is. Right. I tell you, Pete, something that has always gotten my goat is you look at the number of the space, the column inches, the time devoted to worrying about Mitch McConnell's health after his recent slip and fall. And here's the thing. I know McConnell. I don't wish him ill will. I don't wish him harm. But what about all the women whose health is in danger right now because of the court that he rigged? When do they get all that media attention? When do we worry about their health? When are all the thoughts and prayers tweets coming out about them? I've always wondered why we elevate their health and safety over the rest of us. I worried about everybody.
Speaking of, the media, you guys that's probably one of my favorite things is when you're critical of media and you're very specific about it. Whether it be the New York Times or the Atlantic or I don't know. I mean, any number of places you can be very critical of media. You worked, as I said in the intro, you did it all. I think we have that kind of in common. Like I did everything in comedy. Like I saw it all and I was like, I don't want to keep doing just this or doing this way. You saw it all and you were like, I can't keep doing it this way. And so I think it gives you the credibility for sure to criticize it. And you did openly and your kind of burn it all down letter when you basically left DC. And I wonder, what you think, any kind of criticism that you want to make, Sam, about anything generally, whether it be the newspapers or cable media or the chasing of any of it. Where do you want to start? Because you're consistent with that in the newsletter, and I love it.
Well, it's like they say, the things we hate most about others are the things we hate most about ourselves. And I mean, I just have to be honest about it. I was a part of the problem for a long time. I mean, George Carlin said it best, right? It's a big club and you ain't in it. And I think that's the thing most people see that Washington wants to pretend isn't real is that, the lines between the politicians and the press are getting blurry to the point of just disappearing altogether. I mean, you've got some reporters on Capitol Hill these days who just are indistinguishable from House Republican press secretaries. I mean, they're doing the same damn job. I guess what I would say is this: for the longest time, it was treated as a game and people could get away with that. I think when people started dying, it was time to stop treating it as a game. Now you can make the case people were dying all along, and I think that's fair. But I don't know. I'm a big believer in the power of the mainstream media. One of the reasons I attack the New York Times every damn day is because I think they're so damn important. If I didn't think they mattered, I wouldn't care. But they do matter. We need them. We need watchdogs, and we don't need watchdogs that hump the burglar's leg. That doesn't do anybody any good.
That's some Kentucky shit right there, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what. I grew up in a more urban area where we don't have any watchdogs humping. No, I hear what you're saying, and I think it's a really good point. And I like the way that you're framing it about the New York Times specifically. Let's talk about cable news. I mean, so many people get their opinions, their information framed by Fox News, MSNBC, or CNN, and we can take them certainly one by one. I'm not making any equivalency, frankly, between the three. I've worked at all three of them, and I could go on and on. But what do you think about what they're doing, what their incentives are, how they make money, and frankly, I'd love to know your opinion, what you think their future of that medium is.
Yeah, I mean, shit, what can you say about Fox News? I mean, you look at this Dominion stuff. I mean, they've thoroughly disgraced themselves. They've thoroughly outed themselves as a joke of an organization that has nothing to do with news or truth, and absolutely nothing has changed. I'm really hoping that lawsuit will change things. I have great hope for MSNBC. I think they've got some really great people over there. I've never really understood why a liberal network would have so many ex-Republicans working for them. I'm cursed with a long memory, so I'm never going to forget what Morning Joe was like in the run up to 2016. I'm never going to forget Joe and Mika talking about getting married at Mar-a-Lago. Stuff like that sticks with me.
That's why I like you. That's why I like you. I think I feel that we're simpatico that way. I do. I mean, I think, and you've been writing about this too, not to interrupt you, Sam, but just about Iraq. It's the 20th anniversary of the Iraq War. And I, did a segment with veterans every week for a year. And I covered, the latter half of that war by talking to journalists about covering it. That's what I mean. Veterans, national security, foreign policy experts, all the time. I have a memory of how that started and how it's being looked at by some in the media. And I feel the exact same way about what you're saying about Joe and Mika and Mar-a-Lago. But back to your point about cable media, I mean, there's cable news and MSNBC employing Republicans or anything else. What about CNN? What do you think of them?
I guess it's easy to forget CNN exists these days. I mean, that they're in a ratings dive for a reason. You wanting to be so non-confrontational, that news just doesn't work that way. Like, news comes from accountability. It comes from confrontation. It doesn't come from repeating talking points. It doesn't come from having, known liars on your air just to lie to your audience over and over again. People don't need that. They don't want it. They don't want to be lied to. I don't. I've sort of put CNN in the same box as I do the New York Times. I'm very critical of it because I think it's important.
Yeah.
I think to a lot of people, it's the voice of reason. If Fox is too far right and MSNBC is perceived as too far left, then I think a lot of people perceive CNN to be that moderate voice. And I just think CNN's failing that. They've got some tremendous reporters over there. Hell, some of the best reporters I know work over there.
Yeah. But
they're not being allowed to do their jobs. They're acting like politicians, and it's just sad to see.
Do you think Charles Barkley will change that if he comes to CNN?
I think
like power.
I root for Charles Barkley like everybody else, but the man has no rings. He's never won a championship.
He doesn't, but he does have the important ingredient of not seeming to care what people think. So he might just say anything, which might be what they need. I don't know anything about him or his views on things, so I'm not going to say anything either way, but he's funny.
Yeah. I've followed Charles forever. Like you said, I'm from Kentucky and I'm a hardcore basketball fan. And Charles, of course, played basketball for Auburn. So I've been following Charles's career since I was a little boy. I think of an interesting story about him. He talks about how, Charles used to talk about running for governor of Alabama as a Republican. And he tells a story about how he was going off about taxes one day, and the legendary Bill Russell told him to shut the hell up. Said, Charles, do you have any idea what those taxes actually pay for? And he sort of walked him through it. And after that, Charles found some religion.
Oh, wow. I got to find that story. I wonder if that exists somewhere. Archive.
I mean, it's got to, right? Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. What about, now let's talk a little bit about the media. I could talk to you forever about any one of these things, Sam, but I've been pretty defensive of the current crop of Democrats in both the House and Senate, and in a lot of places at the state level. It really bothers me when people say after a horrific shooting that nothing ever changes. When you've got activists and at the state level, you've got laws changing. Now, we know that if those get challenged at the Supreme Court, we're going to have babies carrying pistols in church. Eventually, that's probably where we're headed, and that sucks. But I think that this current crop of Democrats at every level is effective, is progressive. I don't know what you want to call them, but what do you think of a guy like Jamal Bowman standing there in front of all those reporters screaming the other day? That performance and many of the others we're seeing, in the House during committee hearings, I'm impressed with Jamie Raskin. I'm impressed with Stacey Plaskett. What are your feelings about the current crop? And let me keep calling them crops.
Well, they're fighters. And I think, Pete, you and I are about the same age. I think for somebody in our age group, seeing Democrats willing to go on offense like this, seeing Democrats who are willing to fight for ideals, for values, for people, for their base, for the people in their party that, were left behind when triangulation was the play. seeing, if you want to call them this crop of Democrats, I'd say this crop of Democrats are some fighters. You compare them to somebody like Dick Durbin, who's been there since they laid the cornerstone of the Capitol building, and just how frightened he is, when it comes to blue slips, when it comes to stuff like that. I think you have this generation of Democrats who were really scarred by some of the losses of the 90s. And then again, by the Tea Party, the 2010. And then you've got this, this new generation of Democrats that is just like, no, we are not putting up with that. We are not humoring this garbage, and we're going to take it on. Stacey Plaskett this week, my goodness. I mean, you mentioned Jamal Bowman. I mean, watching him stand there and take on Thomas Massey, I can't be alone in feeling some catharsis in this. It's at some point, I think we just need to know that other people are as outraged as we are.
Yes, that's what your newsletter does, by the way. It is.
I mean, that's it. I mean, I think there's just comfort in knowing that you're not the only person that feels this way.
This is what you open the newsletter with. Let me read it to you. You should do this as a podcast. I'm pitching it. Here it is. Note number 1. Sexy Patriots. I don't know if this is the voice. This is the voice I'm giving it. Just mine, basically. Sexy Patriots. Yesterday was a sad and somber day for America. Let us not spike the football and then do an elaborate celebration. Let us be totally cool and LOL, we couldn't keep a straight face. Fuck yeah, y'all. That orange piece of fucking shit finally got fucking indicted. Woo fucking who? That's your respectable newsletter opening.
Yes.
With hundreds of thousands of followers. And because I believe that you're channeling a lot of our emotions.
You can tell I'm a professionally trained journalist.
I think that in this media atmosphere, doing things that people can relate to and understand, and in this case, like, feel emotive about, like, is great. In the end, you're really informing us in a very entertaining way. I mean, it's very thorough. That's what I've always tried to do since working at The Daily Show. When I saw Jon Stewart doing it, I'm like, he's informing people in an entertaining way. And, for progressives, we need something to fight apathy, to care about things. And that's also what I think this current crop of Democrats is. They're not apathetic about policy. They're not ancient fossils. You see Congresswoman Katie Porter.
Mm-hmm.
I used to think Elizabeth Warren was the only kind of wonk nerd or something. There are tons of them. AOC, they got stats. They can recite them in these hearings. How effective do you think it is, or how important it is that they really seem to understand policy and what their constituents want, hearing it from, I don't know, maybe the right people and not necessarily the lobbyists?
Oh, I think it's huge. I mean, I think, it presents just another remarkable contrast between the two parties. I mean, with Republicans, you've just got nothing but, a different performance, a different stunt every day. Whereas Democrats are bringing meat on the bone. I like that you use AOC as an example because, the right loves to caricaturize her as this sort of one-dimensional resistance, figure. And then she just starts talking policy, and she's a wonk. She drops it on them like, a house on a witch in The Wizard of Oz. And I think if you ask Jim Jordan or Jamie Comer how they feel about it, they'll tell you they're exasperated. They're used to going up against, a party that doesn't fight back. You look back at Benghazi, and it was almost a one-sided fight. And that's not happening this time. And, to have these politicians with real depth and with real passion for the people they represent, I think it makes a huge difference. And I think it's a big damn reason why Gen Z is listening to us.
Yeah, well said. And I'm trying to listen to them a lot more too, by the way. And I wonder what your thoughts, the least sexy and most important issue has to me always been campaign finance, because every other issue we're talking about is related to that. And we can talk about the courts. They matter a lot, but it's where I generally am really optimistic. I try to be as optimistic as I can, and I am. But I have a hard time there. You understand how lobbyists lobby Congress. You worked there. You worked in D.C. You were on K Street, literally, probably most days walking. You know how all of that works. What are your thoughts on how much influence special interest money lobbyists have, specifically on Democrats? Because I feel like there's a lot less of that with Democrats these days. Not certainly we can point out many, but what are your thoughts on money's influence and the future of that?
Yeah, I mean, Democrats, you're right, are certainly not immune to this. I think America is looking good for 250 years old, but we have two answers that can be terminal if we don't do something about it. The first is racism. Been with us from the beginning, always been the thing that's going to destroy us. It makes us easy to exploit to our enemies. It's a crack within, and it's going to make us fall apart. The other one is money in politics. And buddy, I mean, you go back to McCain-Feingold, you watch Mitch McConnell, it's just been a laser-focused mission to get as much money in politics as you possibly can. Look how fast, the Supreme Court overturning McCain-Feingold, look how quickly it escalated to Russian money just being everywhere in American politics. I mean, you remember Barack Obama giving a State of the Union and warning this would happen, and Sam Alito having the damn temerity to stand there and mouth, "No, it won't." Well, yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. Big surprise. Sam Alito was wrong about something. I'll just say again, we got two cancers that are eating this country alive. One of them is racism and the other one's money in politics. And I'll tell you the truth, until we expand this court or do something about it, that is going to be the case. Yeah,
no doubt about it. I fully agree. You guys are very supportive of President Biden. I've been really supportive, I think, of President Biden. I think he's too old and should step down. I'm wrong about all these things and never write about things, and no one should ever listen to me. I don't know who should step in. Maybe Kamala Harris. I don't know. But the thing that really disappointed me was 2 weeks ago when he approved the Willow Project. I feel like I've read as much as I can about that. It's not nearly as simple as it would seem, including environmentalists sometimes want to make it. I'm an environmentalist. I think I'm an environmental activist. I read them. I follow them. I support them. But frankly, even the tribal people in Alaska were torn over this because there's a lot of money. But Joe Biden definitely broke a campaign promise. That really hurt me. That one hurt me. That's my biggest criticism, I think, so far. And maybe that he's running again. But you guys are really supportive, lightly critical. Thoughts on President Biden and what he's accomplished and where he's come up short, if any?
I'm with you on the Willow Project. I think I'm hoping that I'm not seeing the tack to the center that I think I'm seeing. Because I think if we learned anything, both from 2020 and the first 2 years of this administration, it's that if you stand up for the people that brought you there, they're going to reward you. And I hope this White House doesn't lose sight of that. Look, we are supportive of President Biden, but we're not afraid to criticize him either. I was a Warren supporter in the primaries. Me too. I never even asked Parkamenko who he was backing. But the thing about Joe Biden is, he gets a lot of crap and not a lot of credit. And I mean, he's done some real FDR stuff these first 2 years. Anybody who pays attention to this, should be shocked that a Washington this broken, this dysfunctional, this infiltrated by domestic terrorists was able to do anything at all. When I wrote that Politico magazine piece back in the day, castigating DC, it never occurred to me that I was in the peak of Washington functionality. I feel like I owe that city in that era an apology. So no, I've been blown away by the things Joe Biden's been able to get done these first 2 years. And I guess when I say I'm a progressive, I guess I emphasize the progress in that, I don't ever expect him to get everything done at once. As long as he's, chipping away at it, I'm happy. But man, that Willow Project stuff, that's real. And if you're not listening to Gen Z right now, then you're just asking to lose elections.
Yeah, it's like my daughters aren't too plugged in, but they pay attention to environmental issues and gun violence because they can't miss it. Their generation doesn't seem to miss that. And my daughter came to me the other day and she's like, "What's up? Well, why did Biden, drilling in Alaska?" And I just did a Biden impression to her and walked out of the room. I was like, listen, you gotta stop joking around. And then I just walked out of the room. I didn't know what to do.
Pretty good.
So your thoughts, I'll let you go, but I got to get your thoughts, Sam Youngman, on Donald Trump being indicted. Do
Did you think where were you on that? It's hard to sort out, I don't know what your thoughts are from Adam's on the newsletter, because you work, work together on that. And, obviously I follow you on Twitter. Were you in the camp that thought he would be indicted? Are you surprised? And what do you think this means?
I've been burned before. I was afraid to love again.
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm like everybody else. I'm shaking my booty. I'm so happy to see this. Ever since Enron, I've been waiting for proof that a rich white dude can get arrested for something. Yeah. And, I hear all these people clutching their pearls about, oh, this is a weak case. Oh, we shouldn't have done this. Oh, it's going to tear the country apart. Okay, let's find out. Let's see what he's charged with. Let's do what we do as Americans. Let's have a real process. The alternative is, well, it's just Donald Trump. We shouldn't have rules for him. I guess I just don't subscribe to that. I come from a long line of people who served this country, and it wasn't so we could kiss some orange king's ass.
Well, you know what I subscribe to? Today's big stuff.
Yeah.
Uncle Sam Youngman, go subscribe. Thank you for joining. This is awesome, man. You're great at this. And I love talking, and I hope that you'll talk to me again.
Pete, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this, buddy. You're a good friend of TBS, and we are grateful.
Thanks, man.
Well, there you go. How about it? Sam Youngman, what did you think? Go find him and go say, hey, Sam Youngman, I appreciate you joining Pete. That'd be awesome. Go subscribe. Do yourself a favor and subscribe to Today's Big Stuff. And I appreciate you appreciating him. And that's it. That's all. I love it. They'll definitely be back. It was very, very good. He sent me a nice note after our conversation, and I look forward to talking to him again. I always look forward to talking to Ophira Eisenberg, who is my second guest on today's show. She's just back from South by Southwest. Of course, she is the host of an awesome new podcast, which you should go subscribe to and then listen and rate and review, because she's such a good friend of the show. That podcast is Parenting is a Joke. Of course, Ophira used to be the co-host of Ask Me Another for 9 years on NPR, their comedy trivia show there. And she's also the author of a great book, which was a New York Times bestseller, How to Tell a Story, The Essential Guide to Memorable Storytelling from the Moth. And her first book, Screw Everyone, Sleeping My Way to Monogamy, is also very, very fun. Watch her comedy special, Plant-Based Jokes, available on iTunes, get it, or on YouTube. And that's my introduction to Ophira Eisenberg. Follow her on Instagram and on Twitter, and go see her live. Ladies and gentlemen, another great conversation with the always brilliant, hilarious, and my good friend, Ophira Eisenberg.
Oh, there she is. It's been way too long since we got her on the pod, at least. But I was going to say tracking her.
Well, we do track each other a little bit, because that's what social media feels like.
Yeah, it's exactly what social media feels like. But also, when you really like a person, as we like each other, you kind of are probably like, hey, literally liking each other's posts or whatever. Hey, oh, good to see you're doing a thing and stuff. And you've been doing a bunch of things. You've been very busy because you're in high demand, because you're a very talented person. You were just in Texas. You were in Florida. But tell me about all your travels. How was South by Southwest?
South by Southwest. Oh, okay. So first of all, Pete, South by Southwest was great. Although I will say that, I don't drink very much. I joke about drinking, but I don't actually drink very much. And the first night I was there after the show, everyone is sort of, there's such a feeling there of like 70 million things going on. It's like a film festival inside of a music festival, inside of a comedy festival, inside of a TED Talk. I mean, there's so much. So there's just ongoing like parties and drinks. And I was just like at these different things, did not take in how many glasses, little flutes of champagne I was pulling off of trays. And I was so hungover the next day from drinking sugary bubbles that I was like, oh my God, what? I walked over to a burger place that was across from my hotel at 3 a.m. because I was like, I'm starving and drunk and I need to eat something. And I looked at their list of burgers, because I'm still in Texas. And I was like, all right, you list your calories. Which is the lowest calories? All right, I'll take this one that only is 3,000. And ate it at 2 a.m. There was free gifts in my hotel room. You know what they were? What? Edibles.
Oh, they gave you drugs? The cannabis?
There was free edible. Yes. in my room. That was a gift from the hotel, from the festival.
I guess that's no longer should be too surprising that we should maybe expect that, because often someone would maybe give you a bottle of wine or champagne or something. I guess, I don't know if that's really weird though. Did you take any?
So I arrived and I had nothing to do that night, and I thought I'll take half of the gummy that says it's mostly CBD, because I'm so afraid of this stuff, because I don't know how I'll react, and I just assume I'm a soft touch. And I ate half of it, and then I was just like, I don't know. I had no idea if it did anything, but I was also not going to be the idiot, not a loser, the idiot I have been in the past when I was actually doing shrooms and what have you, recreational, where that's like the common number one problem, that you go, I don't feel anything. So you double up on it, and then you're like, please end it. Please make it stop.
Yes, no, smart. You're the wisdom of your years came through. I like that. That's always good advice. I don't feel anything. Gah, gah, gah. I feel everything, nothing at the same time. Yeah. Yeah, that's you got to be careful. So what about Austin? What about Texas? Did you have any Texas experiences? Did you go to Joe Rogan's house?
So everyone was hot topic.
Yeah.
So I did not go to Joe Rogan's house, but of course everyone was talking about his comedy club.
Yeah.
That now, and I know is it Spaceship or Mothership?
Oh, I don't know.
Mothership?
I heard he'd open a comedy club in Austin for, because he'd moved there and he wants to obviously perform himself, and What?
It's either called Spaceship or Mothership. We can.
I'm looking it up. Go ahead.
Check that immediately. So people were chatting about
Comedy Mothership.
and some people, Comedy Mothership, and supposedly some people had gone over and just said it's wild, and that there's all these underground tunnels and stuff. So let's say if you are a very high profile celebrity, you can enter, I don't know, from the airport and walk through a tunnel to stage, something really crazy. And also, I don't know how this works out, but people kept talking about that he is offering perhaps house comics, whatever that means, healthcare.
That's unsurprising, because it's interesting you say that, because I know for a fact that he was paying for more than a few people over the years, comedians, healthcare. And he would never, obviously, he's not, say what you will about him having crazy views. That's right. And being he's actually he's a pretty good guy to people in his life. I think most people would agree with that.
He is very pro, trying to figure out the healthcare crisis, and especially knowing that all these comics, and even if they are billionaires, they're still going to have to pay an exorbitant amount out of pocket for very good healthcare. So, so he's offering that. I don't know how, who it is applicable to, but that is extremely attractive. And also, my first thought was, I hope that is true. I hope that is true. And I hope in some way it becomes let's say it's true. And let's say, of course, it would be talked about all the time. Every comic would want to work there. Every MC would be like, I will work no other club. I will move there and I will work your room 4 nights. Why wouldn't you? Right? This is now the best job you've ever had.
To be clear, though, the thing that really irks me about people, and I don't know exactly what Joe Rogan is doing or saying in terms of politically, but he often supports Republicans. And to me, it's like, a friend of mine, I got in a big fight with an old, very good friend of mine when he talked about that he does a lot to help out poor black kids in the inner city where we grew up in Syracuse. And he volunteers his time and he gives them money. And I'm like, dude, you need to support policies that don't put them in poverty. And so Rogan's case, it's if you're giving people health insurance out of your own, and then you're acting like it's noble, it is to give people something out of your own pocket, but then not supporting people who would give everybody universal health insurance, like your Canadians that you're from. That is you're biting. Is it your nose to spite your face or something like that?
That's it. Yep. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Although I think that people are trying to replace that because it's bad for birds with
Right.
something like
Probably not good for birds.
holding
Yeah.
a bird with one hand. I don't know, holding two birds with one hand.
Now you're killing
And then
it
their
by your
mothers don't-
hand and not a stone. It seems to have gotten worse.
I don't know. And then I think if you hold them in your hand, the rest of the birds don't believe those are birds anymore. 'Cause
Bird
they've
in
got
a
bad human
hand?
smell
Wow.
on them.
Sounds like you actually made it worse. You're like, it's like
Doing the
killing
bush.
birds
Anyhow,
by hand and watching them die in front of their family, I think is the new phrase.
decapitating a bird with two knives. It's just, yeah, exactly. You go across kind of like a Japanese samurai.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, in my private,
totally
I
know.
give
It's just
money
like-
to a good cause. Well, are you supporting an actual legislative agenda or policy that would not put people in a place to not be able to get health insurance? Are you supporting unions or, that kind of shit? It's like ridiculous.
I know, it's just another little tiny, capsule, basically. The only thing I was thinking about on this level is, let's say it's real and it's looking outside of the possibility of just like, yeah, well, you're in Texas. Why don't you just start with some legislation there? How about, I don't know, like see what you can drum up in
Well,
Austin.
no, it's a great point because I didn't even think of this. This is the best point. He's covering people's health care as an employer, but Texas is the most uninsured Americans of any state. At one point, it was like a quarter of Texas folks, and they have the federal government through Obamacare would cover a lot more poor people with what's called the Medicaid expansion, and Texas legislators won't allow free money from the government to cover poor people because they literally believe it's about work ethic, which is so stupid, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I want to cover the laziest people, by the way, with insurance. I want them to have insurance.
Yes. I want all the lazy assholes. All of you can be insured. That's how it should go. Hey, hardworking person, by my own subjective ruling.
Right. I mean,
you
it's
also get insurance. But what if, just think of this. What if that was so attractive that another comedy club said, you know what? We'll do health insurance. Like, what if because, I think of some clubs, even in New York, that I think they could afford it. Like, I think with whoever they consider they have people that they bring in 4 nights a week for sure. That's who they depend on to do whatever job.
Yeah.
And they could easily.
Well, do you remember, were you involved in the fight in New York to get a little bit more money for comedy clubs, from comedy clubs?
So I had just moved here and I just remember the names, but I didn't know those people. And I actually was like, I wasn't getting paid. So I didn't even know what was going on.
I mean, I was at all the organizing meetings. There was hundreds of comics there. It was kind of fun actually to have that. And Ted Alexandro and Ray Allen, I think, kind of organized it, whatever. But we got like $5 or $10 more bucks. We were just trying to get a pay raise for the first time ever since the 80s from comedy clubs. And so it's like, it's certainly not going to ever happen. They're going to get health care. But anyway, what else happened in Texas, Ophira? Any other Texas experiences? And how was it? Did you have fun?
Well, I had a great time. I wish I was there longer because, the audiences are great. It's a very fun. There's so much energy. I went to see a band. I never go see a band. Like literally walked into a place where there's live music as they always have. And they have a bunch of different bands that go in there. Saw a band, some, playing all original music, but it's kind of like Americana, I guess, lightly, if I were to give it a genre. Really fun. Actually, that was a very interesting thing. Some guy, I was like, I'm going to grab another beer. And a guy I did not know said, "Here, you can have this one," and gave me a beer that was already opened, like a full beer that was already opened. And I just looked at him and I literally just put my hand out to the side while he watched me, and I threw it in the garbage. And I was like, "You don't hand anyone an open beer. Like, what are you out of your mind?"
Oh, I find that I always tell the girls, well, my older one drinks, the other one I'm not into it yet, but like never take a drink from somebody. But I find you really raised the stakes. You really made an example of him.
Yeah, I was just like, "What are you doing?" Like I said, I had a couple bubbly champagnes in me, so I had a lot of self-esteem.
That's interesting.
I saw some music. I went to a couple panels. I mean, there's so many things. I learned a new word what was it? I can figure it out. It's a combination of disruptor and influencer. Was it influence? Anyways, I can't think of what it is. It was like a amalgamation of and I was like, oh my God, we don't even know how to do this ridiculous jargon anymore. Disruptor influencers. So there's influencers who are influencing, and then there's influencers who are disrupting, and then there's just plain disruptors.
Yeah,
and
I don't
get
know.
them confused.
I don't know the difference, but I want to be both. I know I want to be an influencer and a disruptor, and that's what I aspire to be. So whatever the word is, I hope to become one.
But it was very fun, and I was like, I could spend 2 weeks here because there's actually there's so much entertainment to be had, but there's such interesting talks being held.
Love it. Yeah, I love it. I used to go to
and some of them are very corporate. Of course, there's a lot of corporate shilling happening by, whether it's just outright a company is being like, hey, come see our stuff, or if it's a celebrity that is giving a talk that is a thinly veiled commercial for some product or situation. But on top of that, Pete, I got to tell you, this is the first time this has happened to me. I was at the airport, JFK, waiting to get on my flight. I've never been to South by Southwest before. Felt like it was a pretty big deal because these festivals just have a certain cachet and not everyone gets invited. It felt really important to me. And I got a call from my husband that our son's school had called him, that our son had fallen down at recess and his head was bleeding badly. And I was like, oh my God. And so I was like, well, go get him and tell me what's going on.
You were like, let me cancel my flight. Work on that.
Right? And I was sitting there going like, do I cancel my flight and turn back around and see what's going on? Do I wait to find out what the situation is? What do I do? In the meantime, I just figured out like, this is the hospital you're going to. I called his pediatrician and tried to talk myself into, that was hilarious. I called his pediatrician, got the front desk for us. I'm like, hey, my kid fell at school. His head is bleeding. It's bad enough that we have to pick him up from school. My husband's taking care of it. How soon can we come in? And she was like, well, I've got a 4:00. I was like, yeah, well, what do you give to kids when their head has been broken open? And she was like, I might have a 3:15. I was like, I was like, and you know what I said? I'll take the 3:15.
Of course. Is he okay?
Yeah. So Jonathan got him. He said, listen, it's definitely bleeding, but and we're going to go to the hospital for stitches. I was still not on the plane. I was like, okay, I'm waiting. Again, I'm like, do I cancel? And then I was like, if I cancel, I'm like calling like, the people that have invited me, men, and saying like, my kid fell and I can't do the festival. The whole thing was fraught, but I was also like, of course, Lucas was talking. We quizzed him on Pokemon evolutions and stuff, and he was right on top of it. Mm-hmm. So the idea that there was, a concussion or any sort of brain trauma was low. And then Jonathan gave him an iPad, and he was super happy, and he was FaceTiming with me. And then once they were at the hospital and they were seen, we were told 3 stitches.
Scar? Is he officially a part of your family now? With a scar?
It's so funny you say that. So by the way, I went on the trip. I felt guilty the whole time, but I went. Because I felt he was in good hands.
Can I ask
safe.
you what were you going to say when you said so funny you say that? Because I have a serious question for you.
I was going to say, so funny you say that because, I just did that whole show about scars and I have been reflective upon the fact that my son really doesn't have one yet. And I find that wild and also, I guess unsustainable for lack of a better word, because something's going to happen. And then it did. And of course, because I've been publicizing recently doing the show about scars and talking about so much, so many people said like, oh, that's so great. Now he's part of your show. And I was like, you know what my plan is in life? No more stories. No more. Zero stories.
Well, I guess that's related to kind of what I want to ask you, because you had so much adversity your whole life. You've been through a lot. You've seen it all. Different types of loss, cancer, your own scars, obviously, you've talked openly about, just did this show. And we don't want our kids to suffer.
No.
And we, there's always a question of how much we do for them and how much we comfort them and coddle them and all that. And we can debate. But the truth is they grow from any kind of adversity, and you hope it doesn't break them. How do you think about that, given what you experienced and trying to protect your own son from having certainly the worst of the things that you experienced, a car crash where you lost a friend, you lost your mom, all those things. Like, you hope that obviously those extreme things, but at the same time, it's almost like, hey, he bumped his head, he's got a scar, he recovered, and he learns from that. I mean, how do you balance that in your mind if you do?
I mean, mostly with tequila shots. No, but the truth, the truth is that the super emotional part of me just goes, life is tragic and disappointing and terrible things happen and there's nothing I can do about it. And, it is all suffering and I hate it. And the other part of me goes, kind of what you said is like, it is important. It's much more important for this kid to learn what it is like to cope with something, learn about healing, learn about getting through something, learn that there's support, learn how it works when you go to the hospital and you have to, and the way people talk to you, like these are important skills just for life, and that you can recover. And he wasn't very cry-y or scared with me when I was just talking to him through the devices, but my husband was like, yeah, he was not like really freaking out, which is interesting because that's not the kid I was.
Meaning,
I was so freaked. I think once I survived the car accident, now that was obviously very intense.
How old were you then?
There was clearly some 8, so similar age, but there was something that got missed in how I was taught to cope or not taught to cope, because after that, anytime like I got a scratch, I would overreact and freak out and be so worried. I'd be so worried.
Yeah.
And yeah, that didn't.
My Julia is like that. Our Julia is like that. I don't mind saying it. Yeah, I don't mind saying it. She gets, really, really anxious about aches and pains and trying to get to the root of that. But Val is very accommodating. I think we both are. But, gets worried about her, of course. But last night, she hurt her finger at the beginning of the week, and she's like, it's not getting better. We got to do something, whatever. And I was hosting our hangout, and I just see this text. Val's in bed, and it's a group text, and Val just writes, get a grip. And I was just like, sometimes you gotta, yeah. I don't know. I wish that didn't happen to her, but it's late at night. You can't do this to yourself right now. It's your finger, okay? Get a grip.
No, yeah, I know. Exactly.
And I like that. I thought that was good in that one moment, at least.
It was totally. No, sometimes you just need to literally have someone, give you the reality check of just like, you're fine. It's going to be fine in some way. So, yes. So this is all important. And then, very recently, someone said, oh my goodness, I heard this happen to you, Lucas. Are you okay? And he goes, it was the best. I got as much iPad as I wanted. And then my mom bought me cookies and a friend dropped off ice cream. So he clearly thought it was a standout moment in his childhood.
I think that, speaking of Julia, she broke her arm on the first day of kindergarten. I think that will always be a good thing for her. She got this pink cast. She had to have surgery. It was dramatic, but like all of that was horrible for us. It was really tragic and at the time. Yeah. But I do think that was like, it made her instantly, everybody in her kindergarten class, her first year of school, she knew she was the girl with a broken arm from, this hot pink cast and put her on the map, I think.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's so funny you say that because Lucas is so, I think the wound itself was not large, but it was deep. That's why there were stitches required, but not very many. And as we all know, I think heads bleed like crazy.
Yeah.
So head wounds really present very scary.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So when he came back, after the weekend, because this happened on a Friday, of course, you know how that always works. It's just like, hey, our dishwasher, sink, and heating, the splashed air conditioning is no longer working. And it is the Friday of a long weekend. So yeah, he hit his head on, of course, the Friday. And he came back on Monday with his hair kind of greasy and this very, still kind of bloody cut with some stitches hanging out of it. And he was like, oh yeah, everybody wanted to see it.
Yeah, it's cool.
Everybody
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to
Oh,
see
yeah.
it. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I actually asked the doctor to leave a long thread just so people could be like, look at that stitch, dude.
So I was like, did you show it? He goes, yeah, I showed it.
But it apparently hasn't affected his brains, because you were telling me that you and your husband have had to, you have a challenge. He's too smart. He's getting everything correct in school. And now you have to find a more challenging place. Do I have that right?
I mean, we're trying to figure out if that's what you do. I just have this idea because he brings home these tests. He's never gotten one wrong. I mean, and then the teacher was like, oh yeah, I'm going to give you a 4th grade spelling list to do with him and he's in the 2nd grade. She goes, because, I think our words are too little for him. And I was like, oh, okay. And then the other day he was like, can I do division? I want to do division in math. I was like, oh, okay. And he goes, how does division work? And I gave him this brutally bad description of like a pie and, basically sectioning it
You're
up.
working on a comedy
and
club. There's 5 other comics. There's one pizza.
Right. There's 9. You got 90 minutes and the headliner has an ego trip. How much time?
They're all men.
There's a guest spot. Whose time should be divided?
That's great. So I can't believe that you got a good one there. You want to accommodate the hell out of that, right? So you're looking for like
right. So I feel like there is this, part of who I am, who I grew up to be was someone that nobody. I mean, to think of my parents sitting around a table and discussing like, Ophira is doing really well. How do we put her in the best place we can possible? Yeah. Are you kidding?
Oh, I feel. It's the best feeling in the world. I'm actually had a week of that because Ava got into a good college and Julia got in the game and scored, and I didn't get either. I didn't get either of those. And I mean, to have your kid that young. Granted, you did hold Lucas back 3 times. He should. It's not surprising that he's but I mean, to have a kid that young and to aspire to want to do more math. Like my daughter, they're both doing great, but like my daughter's in 9th grade and she's like, algebra can go fuck itself. I'm not enjoying this.
He will probably hit his head against a wall pretty soon because it does get exponentially harder.
I don't know.
I just feel like there's this kind of funny thing where, part of you just goes, he's a smart kid, it'll be great. And then you just go, yeah, but they've just begun with all of this stuff. So if you've just started on knowledge and you were already like there should, I feel like there should be some challenge, even just for his, like the hitting the head on the ground. Like you need also to learn what it's like to not get something right.
Don't you think they need to learn what it's like to not have any work because robots are going to be doing it all at the same time? Because are you following all this AI? I mean, like, it's crazy. It's
oh my God. You bring up a great point. Although I have said, we have not met the adults yet who are the children who had iPhones foisted into their strollers.
Right.
We've not met those people yet. We don't know who they are.
That's right. That'll be interesting.
And we don't know if they are going to rebel again, if they're going to embrace it fully and they're going to be like, yeah, AI is saving our lives. I love AI. I plug in and go to wherever I want to go. Like, I don't know. Or if they are going to be like, I hate this shit.
Working in lithium mines for robots.
Nathan McIntosh, a very funny comic, he lists like the jobs of the future, and they're all ridiculous. But one that stands out is like the guy who basically shovels water back into the ocean from land. Like the jobs that are
That's a funny ass premise for a joke. Jobs of the future. I love that. Before I let you go, you're a New Yorker. Are you? What's the scuttlebutt on Trump? On Tuesday, are you worried about an insurrection? All the cops have to come to work in their uniforms. What's the scuttlebutt? What are people saying? What are they saying? What are they talking about? Are you worried?
What are they saying? So I'm not worried because I think, like everything, it is a media event that is being orchestrated.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm suspicious. I think there's part of me that doesn't believe it's going to happen, that there's going to be some weaseling in the next, I don't know, 48, what are we at? 48 hours, 50 hours, 56 hours?
He's going to land in Moscow. He's going to show up in Moscow.
So, I feel like, I feel so, I wouldn't say embittered, but so just like suspicious. And I'm like, I'll wait till I see it. But I was just sitting in a cafe in Brooklyn, Park Slope, which, as you may characterize it, is extremely liberal place. I mean, I think this place was 100% vaccinated before the vaccine even was here. It's so of that. And I was sitting in a cafe here.
The actual location is called Pronoun.
Yeah, exactly. My neighborhood is a they there. I'm letting you know. And I went to get on Wi-Fi, and you always get the list of Wi-Fi, and I was just looking for the one at the cafe, and there was a Wi-Fi in the vicinity called Trump 2024. And I was like, see, you just never know where people are around you, and make them sound like they are the insurgents, but that there are people around everywhere in New York that support Trump and are going to be very angry about this.
Yeah.
But they are, I mean, I think everyone's still, I'll see it when I see it. That's what I was talking about with my neighbors. We're all just like, let's see it when we see it, which maybe is stupid. Maybe that's a dumb thing to do. And it should be like, no, let's block up all the stores. Let's make sure there's no looting. Let's put, cops on every angle. I see cops all over the city right now. And let me tell you, I feel all I do is watch everybody around them doing petty crime. And I'm like, wow, I guess everything, what is the bar right now?
You mean you're seeing cops walking around and you're also seeing crimes being committed?
Yeah. Just petty crimes. I'm not saying stealing or anything like that. Just let's say people jumping over turnstiles, smoking on the subway.
Right.
Just you're just constantly witnessing, and you're like, well, I guess none of that matters.
It's great to get your insight from New York and on everything else. And whenever I'm talking to you, as I'm wrapping up, I always think, oh man, I love talking to her, and I missed talking to her. That's my feeling. So I wanted to say it to you. It's been way too long. I'm so happy to see you.
You too.
Virtually. I hope to see you in person soon.
Pete. You look good.
Yeah, I've been new skincare regimen.
No way, really?
Yeah. I've been showering.
Because your skin does look really good.
Yeah.
You've been recently showering? That's new?
I've been taking baths. No, nothing's changed.
Yeah, baby.
I'm nothing. Okay. I've done nothing. You just haven't seen me in a while. I got a good new ring light.
Yeah, it is good. It is beautiful. Is that a matte finish? I love
redecorated my set to make myself look better. I trimmed my beard.
Oh yeah, it's true. When I see a guy with a beard that's a little less trimmed, I look at them and I'm like, are you okay?
He's not.
A little emotional?
He's not. I'm telling you right now.
And then too closely trimmed, I'm like, are you okay? That's both sides are kind of one saying nothing's working out. The other one is saying I'm planning on something real bad.
Exactly why I keep it right in between. Look at that neck beard. Thank you, Ophira.
Beautiful. Thank you, Pete.
All right, there she goes, Ophira Eisenberg. Awesome as always. Go say hi to her. Go follow her. Go subscribe on social media. Go subscribe. It's always such a weird thing to say still. To her podcast, Parenting is a Joke. Go listen. You will absolutely love her over there. And tell her I sent you. Say hi to her. And that's it. Thanks again to Sam Youngman. Go thank him. Go write a review for this podcast on Apple or iTunes. And if you're not already a paying subscriber, please, let's go. Sign up. StandUpWithPete.com, Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. And that's it. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Welcome to April. You guys are the best. Bye-bye. John Carroll, take us away.
Stand up. I think you're driving wheels been leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us wants to know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.